person he's been all his life. And what he slowly begins to kind of discover is that he's not a very likable person. I mean, he's charming, but he's just, he's not very likable. And every moment you see him with these women affects him differently. And you see it time and time again. Now, thematically, you could argue that there is a redemption idea here also as well, like in the other movie, of him wanting to know who the child is. But I had to ask myself, like, why? I mean, like, what happens, as you're watching it, you're thinking to yourself, well, because you know how he is, you're asking yourself, well, what happens if he does find him? What happens if he doesn't find him? Does it correct all the wrongs he's committed in his life? Does it clear his conscience because he gave it the old college try? I mean, like, you're slowly wondering because you're looking at his character and you're realizing, who is this guy? And like, what is he really like? Why is he really embarking upon this? The structure of the film does fall in the regular 4-act structure, but I look at it differently. To me, this film was more about maybe 4 to 5 different acts, because each time he meets with a woman, it's like its own separate story, but it's still part of the film as a whole. So as you see him go from Jessica Lange to Sharon Stone to Frances Conroy to Tilda Swinton, as he's going through all these different women, it's like its own little kind of mini movie, because you get your hook, you get your conflict, you get your climax, and then you get your resolution. So it's got its own kind of, feeling to it. But if you were to stick it into the regular 4-act, structure, the movie begins where you kind of see Don's lifestyle. In the second act, you see him where he's trying to wrestle whether or not he wants to go out and look for his son. And then he finally, launches himself out there to go do it. About midway through the movie, you kind of realize that he thinks he's bitten off more than he can chew. And then by the time you get to the third act, again, another film, like People, Places, Things, I'm not quite sure where the climax is in this thing. Well, I kind of do, and I don't want to give it away, but it's interesting when you see it kind of get to that moment and you're just like, but then, it still kind of leaves you wondering. And I think that's the interesting way that Jim Jarmusch directed this movie. He's the director, and he's done a solid 29 credits of movies. Most of his films are shorts. But some of his more notable movies are Down by Law, Ghost Dog, and Only Lovers Left Alive. There's not really much, to his resume. He did a great job using visuals, emphasizing the differences of the women that were involved. Each scene with each woman was very, very distinct. And what's interesting is, as you're looking at him interact with all these different individuals, you're wondering, well, how did he date this woman here, but then he dated this woman over here, and then he dated this woman over here? Because all of them come from different backgrounds, socioeconomic groups, different types of careers. It is a dizzying array of individuals that he's involved with. The cinematography, I thought, was really, and that lends itself to the cinematography, which I thought was really, really cool. The way they kind of pulled you into each situation, wondering with the visuals, as the camera took these kind of angular shots at different things in the room that could have possibly been clues that will help you solve the mystery of whether or not this mother or this woman was the one who was the mother of his child. So that was kind of neat. And there were also some very interesting dream sequences that were kind of used as flashbacks that kind of give you some clues to the mindset of Don. But it's, for the most part, it's kind of replays some of the highlights of who people were in his life and how he really, truly actually felt about them. Now, what worked in this movie, I thought, was the weight of it, the seriousness of it. I mean, it was really cool to see Bill Murray in such a serious role. There are very, very few laughs in this movie, if any. A couple times you'll chuckle, but there's a lot of unanswered questions that are brought up, and some things are resolved and some things are not. What to me fell short in this movie was the lack of dialogue. I get what Jim was doing by not having the character talk, because he really wanted to kind of capture his loneliness. Man, I was like, come on. There's this certain scenes where you're just like, okay, so we're just going to sit here and listen to a song and watch him sit on a park bench. Like, okay, well, but again, that's me looking at it from a stylistic standpoint. Overall, the film is rated R, mainly because of language and, once again, some more frontal nudity. On the Aristotle Index, this film got a 0. Okay. I mean, flat out zero. I thought this was an extremely realistic movie of a guy who decides to try to figure out who the mother of his child is. And, you know, nothing was forced at all. It was just like, okay, this is, if you were going to look for your kid, this is what it would look like. So it's kind of neat. And it's also dated too, because I think it came out in 2005. So it's kind of neat when you see some of the images of computers and the lack of cell phone usage and stuff like that. So it's kind of neat when you go back in time and see stuff like this. IMDb gave it an extremely solid 7.8. Rotten Tomatoes, man, and 87%. And the audience score was about 70. And I'm guessing the audience score was low because, like I said, when you're used to seeing actors in certain roles, it's kind of weird when you see them outside of that role. And it was very strange seeing Bill as a very serious guy. As far as the cinema and cocktails rating, man, I had to give it a solid 4.5 remotes, man. Bill in a serious role, it's hard to deal with. I mean, but he pulls it off with nuance and complexity. It's hard to play a semi-depressed person and keep a straight face all the time while you're on camera. And I thought that the ensemble cast of women in this movie was nothing short of extraordinary. Each one of them had their moment in the sun in this wonderful introspective odyssey. So I'm sitting here watching Broken Flowers, and I'm just wondering, you know, what it must be like for Bill Murray's character to be going, you know, through this, you know, gut-wrenching circumstance of trying to find out who the mother of his child is. And so I'm trying to figure out what's a good contemplative drink that I could sip on while I would wonder, what would I do in the same situation? And I decided to go with a whiskey sour. Okay. Not because I think Bill Murray is bitter, but I just think a whiskey sour just kind of fits the whole kind of mood of this movie. So when you make a whiskey sour, you're going to need about 2 ounces of whiskey. You're going to need about 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice, fresh, or you can go with sour mix. You're going to need probably about a half ounce to 3/4 of an ounce of simple syrup, or, and I've heard people use this regular old teaspoon of sugar, and then you garnish with a maraschino cherry or a lemon peel. Now, as the name suggests, the cocktail is sour, but the flavor is balanced perfectly when you complement it with the sweetness of the whiskey and the simple syrup. So it's not as tart as you might think. So, and I thought it was fitting because even though, you know, you're sitting here watching it and you think that Don could or possibly might get his answer, you know, to the question that the film is asking, I don't think it's going to make much of a difference because he's going to lead a sour life trying to make sense of it all. Episode 4 is in the books, and you know, I think for my next episode, I think I'm gonna do an ensemble film. I don't know what it was, but Broken Flowers, I don't know, man, just got me thinking, you know, about how cool it is when you have such an allotment of quality actors all kind of vibing on screen at the same time. You know, it's almost like when you have a good group of friends over and the atmosphere is right and everyone's enjoying themselves. And then, of course, there's always some idiot that spills a drink on the carpet, or somebody breaks a glass, or somebody complains about the food and entertainment that they're getting free of charge. And then, you know, that's when you have to kind of channel your inner Ernest Hemingway. And remember that an intelligent man or woman is sometimes forced to be drunk in order to spend time with their fools. Take care. Be responsible, and I will see you next episode.